Welcome to Experiments in Happiness with Michelle Lemus, the podcast for high achieving women who've checked all the boxes but still feel something's missing.
We live in a culture that loves a makeover story. The reset, the glow up, the reinvention arc, new habits, new routines, new identities, a clean break from who you were before. We love the before and after. We love the montage. We love the moment where someone looks at their old life and says, that version of me is gone. And when something in your life starts to feel misaligned, that story becomes incredibly seductive because it suggests the problem is who you are, not how disconnected you've become. It suggests that if you could just overhaul things enough, if you could finally become the right version of yourself, then the restlessness would disappear. So when discomfort shows up, we don't usually say, I feel disconnected from myself. We say things like, I think I need a reset. I need to reinvent myself. I don't recognize who I've become. Those sentences sound proactive. They sound strong. They sound hopeful. And when you're tired of feeling off, hope matters. When you feel disconnected, reinvention sounds like movement. It sounds like action instead of waiting, change instead of stagnation, a plan instead of uncertainty. But here's the truth I keep coming back to, both personally and professionally. Most of the time, you don't need a reinvention. You need a reconnection. Reinvention is tempting because it promises a clean slate, a new identity, a new routine, a new version of you who finally has it together. It implies that the problem can be solved by becoming someone else, someone more disciplined, more aligned, more confident, more you than you currently feel. It suggests that if you could just leave the messy parts behind, if you could skip the in between, if you could outrun the discomfort, then everything would finally feel right. But reinvention also carries a subtle message that often goes unnoticed. It quietly says, who I am right now isn't enough. And that message doesn't restore connection, it erodes it because it tells you to look away from yourself at the exact moment you need to come closer. Most women who want to reinvent themselves aren't actually lost, they're overextended. They've been responding instead of choosing, meeting expectations instead of honoring needs, functioning instead of feeling, performing competence instead of listening inward. They've been living from the outside in, checking boxes, managing logistics, holding everything together, and slowly, quietly, contact with self gets deprioritized. Not intentionally, not carelessly, just gradually. And over time, that creates distance. Not distance from success, not distance from capability, distance from self. So life starts to feel flat or heavy or strangely unsatisfying. Even the things you worked hard for don't quite land. You might have moments of joy, but they don't linger. You might have rest, but it doesn't restore. You might have success, but it doesn't feel like yours. And then that thought shows up. I should be happier than this. That thought is painful because it carries shame. Because from the outside, things look fine, good even. So instead of listening inward, many women assume the answer is more change, a bigger shift, a new direction, a different version of themselves. But that urge isn't about reinvention, it's about disconnection. Reinvention says, become someone else. Reconnection says, come back to yourself. Reinvention looks forward aggressively. Reconnection looks inward gently. One demands effort, the other asks for attention. And attention is often the thing that's been missing all along. Reconnection doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't come with a dramatic announcement. It doesn't usually involve quitting your job or moving across the country. It shows up quietly. When you notice what drains you and don't override it. When you admit what you miss, even if it doesn't fit your current life neatly. When you tell the truth to yourself without immediately fixing it. When you stop pushing past your own signals just to keep functioning. These moments don't look impressive. They don't look productive. They don't look like growth on Instagram. But they are powerful because every time you listen instead of dismiss, pause instead of push, or choose instead of react. You rebuild trust with yourself, and trust is the foundation of feeling alive. Without trust, everything feels forced. With trust, even small choices feel meaningful. There's a nervous system truth underneath all of this that explains why reinvention feels so compelling and why reconnection actually works. When you've been disconnected for a long time, your nervous system adapts. It prioritizes efficiency over curiosity, control over intuition, stability over aliveness. That adaptation is intelligent. It helped you survive seasons that required endurance. It helped you stay functional when slowing down wasn't an option. But it also narrowed your inner world. Reconnection isn't about shaking everything up, it's about creating enough safety to feel again. And feeling doesn't require a new personality, it requires contact. Contact with your body, contact with your preferences, contact with your truth. That's why the feeling of something needs to change is so often misunderstood. We think it means we need more clarity, more motivation, and more discipline, more direction. But most of the time, it means we need contact. Contact with what matters to you now, not who you were 5 years ago. Contact with what your body has been quietly asking for. Contact with what you've outgrown. Contact with what you've been tolerating because it felt easier than disrupting things. That's not reinvention. That's reconnection. And reconnection doesn't happen in sweeping gestures. It happens in micro moments, which is why today's experiment is intentionally simple. Once per day, pause and ask yourself one gentle question. Not all of these, just one. What feels heavy right now? What feels quietly good? What do I need a little less of today? What do I miss? Or what am I ignoring because it's inconvenient? No fixing, no planning, no pressure to act on everything you notice, just noticing and responding with one small adjustment. That adjustment might be tiny. Taking a break instead of pushing, saying no without explaining yourself, doing less of the thing that drains you, adding one small moment of relief. Reconnection doesn't require courage in big doses. It requires honesty in small ones. At first, this kind of attention can feel emotional, sometimes tender, sometimes sad, sometimes relieving in a way that catches you off guard. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're finally listening again. And with attention comes clarity, not the dramatic kind, the honest kind, the kind that says, oh, this is what I've been missing. So if you're feeling disconnected, hear this. You don't need to erase yourself to feel alive again. You don't need a new identity. You need your own attention. And who you are underneath the noise is still there, waiting. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not failing at life. You're just ready to come home to yourself. So we'll keep experimenting because happiness isn't found by becoming someone else. It's found by reconnecting with who you've been all along.
Thanks for listening to Experiments in Happiness. You can find more tools and resources at experimentsinhappiness.com.